Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 89 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts podcast network. I am your host tonight, Rocky Petrella at Dynasty FF Addict, and no guests tonight, but I got both of my co-hosts with me, Andrew at Andrew Hall FF, Scott at Scott_Sidlow, and guys, the NFL is drunk and I'm loving it.
Hell yeah.
So we're just gonna get right into it because I think this is gonna be a long one tonight. So this is gonna be a long one, as if every other one isn't a long one.
Right.
But we are gonna touch a little bit on the news. I'm sure much to Scott's chagrin, but and then we're gonna get into this is our Find Me a Trade spectacular episode. We're gonna have 3 leagues. Each of us is gonna find a trade. So 9 trades altogether, just trades on trades on trades. So let's try and run through this new stuff real quick. We're only going to talk about some of the real major things, especially after what happened yesterday. Tyreek Hill traded from the Chiefs to the Dolphins. And I feel like I need to take this one first because I did tweet. I spent a lot of yesterday tweeting out about it. Simply because I said
didn't see anything.
What I thought was a simple fact, which is that, and you can take this in a lot of different directions. This trade is so interesting to me because there's so many people affected by it. But the one I was seeing referenced the most was Jalen Waddle, and I just tweeted out, this Tyreek Hill coming to the Dolphins is not bad for Jalen Waddle, and it's not, people. Stop worrying about Jalen Waddle. If you are a very good player, having another very good player come to your team to help your offense is not going to kill your production. If you're Devontae Parker, it might kill your production. If you're Jalen Waddle, this helps him. It's going to take coverage away, which is a bit of an NFL cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason because they have some truth in them. And if you're good, you're going to earn targets. It's going to help him. I threw this as an example on a separate tweet. T. Higgins had a 67, I think it was 67, 980, and 6 rookie season. Then Jamar Chase comes, who's ostensibly the better player, and he increased his catches by 7, went up 100 in yards, had 3 more targets, and had the same amount of touchdowns. And he played 2 less games. So when a good player comes to your team, it makes your offense better. You get more first downs. You get more yardage. You get more longer drives. You get more more touchdowns for the offense as a whole, which gives you a chance to get more touchdowns. I just, at worst, I think this keeps him around the same league. Maybe take a slight dip in volume. I think I looked and he had 140 targets last year. He's probably not going to hit 140 targets. Can he hit 125, 130? I think so. Maybe they pass more because they have 2 awesome pass catchers. It's not like they have a great running game either. So, like I said, at worst, I think it's a lateral thing. I think it even helped him. He also only averaged 9.8 yards a catch. I'll bet you anything he improves on that this coming year with a better offense, with Tyreek pulling coverage and all that stuff. So, what did you guys think of my my tweet that got a lot of reaction and my take here?
I'll go first. I completely agree with you. I think that there is an entirely possible world where it's a 1A, 1B kind of thing where Tyreek gets, I'd say 100 targets and 1,300 yards, and Waddle gets 98 targets and 1,250 yards. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that offense is going to support 2 wide receiver ones for fantasy. I think that's where it gets a little tricky because we haven't quite seen Tua do it, but to be honest, we hadn't seen Burrow do it either, and he did.
By the way, though, since you said that, I just want to chime in real quick. I think there's a world where Waddle has the better fantasy season than Tyreek.
Oh, for sure. I think there's actually a chance that he scores more touchdowns. I feel like Tyreek's going to get a lot of the looks, and I think that's where I'm saying, like, he may not have as many targets and yards, but he could easily do 10 touchdowns to Tyreek's 5 and is the better receiver. I guess my point, though, is just for fantasy, there's a lot of receivers. There's a ton of receivers that can be a wide receiver 1 in any given week, let alone points per game or end of the season. I think that's going to be tough. It's not impossible, but it's going to be tough to get them both as wide receiver 1s. As a Bengals fan, it's tough for me to say that Chase and Higgins are both going to be wide receiver 1s too. It's the same logic. It's just there's only so many places to go with the ball. But again, I think you said it perfectly. A rising tide helps all boats, right? If this offense gets better, that helps the offense, which in theory, should translate to helping the offensive weapons. So I don't hate Waddle. I'm trying to trade for him right now. I'm trying to acquire him wherever I can. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think this hurts Tyreek more than it hurts Waddle, and
For sure.
I know Scott's probably, when I throw it to him, going to chime in with the Tua stinks argument, which I also heard when I tweeted this out. But first of all, I don't think Tua stinks. I don't think we've seen peak Tua. They improved the O-line. He's got a better offense around him, and he's got a better coach. So if he doesn't do it this year, then I'll go with Scott that he stinks. But Kirk Cousins supported 2 top 12 receivers, and everybody hates Kirk Cousins, which Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, but he's not, Aaron Rodgers. But the better argument that I threw out there is Jared Goff in 2019 supported 2 top 13 wide receivers in points per game in Woods and Cup, and Jared Goff stinks. So
when he had a greater sign Goff, right?
Yes.
Tua is definitely better than Goff, right?
Exactly. And so it can be done. And then maybe they're not top 12, maybe they're both top 15, top 16, but they're both going to be very good, I think. But Scott, any thoughts, whether it's Waddle or if you want to go, Tyreek, Mahomes, anything?
Yeah, I mean, if this opens up a buy window for Mahomes or Waddle, then you should be in on that. Take advantage. Mahomes is just one of those quarterbacks. It doesn't really matter. Like, does it help to have Tyreek? Well, obviously, yeah, it does. But you think that they don't have some sort of plan here? I mean, there's seriously 642 receivers coming out in this draft class, and so they're going to add a couple. And I'm sure they're not done in free agency yet, or they could make another trade or whatever. They've got tons of draft capital now. Let's just take a break.
I was just going to say, they pick at the end of the first. I threw out in a chat somewhere, I would love Jameson Williams to the Chiefs at this point.
Oh, yeah. It makes perfect sense, right? I mean, I think he's going to be a hot commodity, even with that injury. But the thing is, people want to react so much all the time. And what do we talk about? Like, you don't need a running back in March. Yeah, well, same thing here. You don't need a full complement of wide receivers in March. Like, we got 6 months till they're going to play a game. So let's just relax. Let's see what they do. I mean, honestly, this makes perfect sense for them to do it. They have other holes they need to fill. They lost Tyrann Mathieu. They lost a pass rusher. They're still rebuilding that O-line. They really haven't hit on a running back. So, I mean, they have – and you're going to pay a 28-year-old receiver with, off-field issues or
they'd be paying
off-field issues. So, this was a great move for the Chiefs from a football standpoint.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. They'd be paying like 70-some million for 2 players in Mahomes and Tyreek. That would have been nuts.
Yeah, no, that is a very smart move. And so people can complain all they want fantasy wise. I get it. That's what we're doing here. But it was the right move. So it's hard to argue with that,
Yeah, and Toronto Dave in the chat he often tunes in. Thanks, Dave. It says, I'm struggling gauging Tyreek's value. Someone wants my 103 and Juju at minimum. I couldn't do it. I assume that was to trade for Tyreek. So
it looks like yeah.
What do you guys think on that one, Andrew?
I mean, okay, so you saw this trade. We talked about it in our host chat where I sent pretty much Juju for the 106, and I was very happy with that. I was ecstatic to get the 106 for Juju. I felt like that was pretty fair value. I didn't feel like it was a fleecing of either side. I feel like that's probably where his value will be. Yeah. I don't know if it's there right now, but I don't know if I want to put much higher than that, I guess. I mean, 103 and Juju, I mean, that's a lot for Tyreek. I mean, so I feel like it's almost like 2 Jujus for Tyreek. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather have Tyreek. I mean, if this was next year's class or had all the hype around last year's class or something, maybe that'd make more sense. But for me, it's even like two picks for Tyreek just feels light, and I feel like Juju's about a first. And so again, I feel like Tyreek's the better side there. But it's tricky. I totally get the logic of why that's frustrating.
Yeah, I think it's close. You agree with Andrew, Scott?
I mean, I think it's going to depend. Are you one receiver away from being the contender? I mean, with that 103, you can add one of the top running backs, one of the top receivers, a quarterback. I mean, there's just so much you could do with that 103. So if you feel like Juju is just a depth piece for you and, Tyreek's going to plug into your lineup, and then if you feel great about all your other positions, then you could do the trade. Like, I don't think it's too much, but I mean, I probably wouldn't do it. But then that just comes down to, me not believing in Tua. So I mean, that's where it's gonna come back to for me.
Okay.
So I didn't do the trade, but I could understand if you did. It's not a bad value.
No, I think that's kind of where we're at with this. Is that I don't think it's a bad trade on either side. That's what makes it so tough, right? It's like there's not a smash side on this, but it just feels light. I feel like I could get more than that for Tyreek in September, right? We talk about timing a lot, and that's the kind of trade where it's like you're kind of buying a little bit of the dip on Tyreek at that point, in my opinion.
And I think you're buying a bump on Juju, which I'm not sure.
True.
He's on our sheet here, because he did go to he was on there as a separate transaction 2 days ago because he went to the Chiefs.
Exactly.
And I don't know that this changes that much for Juju. I don't think he's getting peppered with targets just because Tyreek's going. They play entirely different roles. So I think what you're saying, Andrew, is that you would take the Tyreek side, which is what Dave would be getting. So
I would take the Tyreek. Yeah, I would send these two for Tyreek. Yeah, and he's mentioning he is a contender. He does have studs in depth. Like, if you've got the kind of roster to you don't need the 103. You're already pretty young. You're making a run this year. I don't mind sending the 103, and then what could be a second round pick in a month when they draft somebody, right? I mean, Juju's not necessarily a locked in first round pick in my mind. I don't think he's worth a first round guaranteed. And again, every league is different. Every market is different. But I'm looking at this like, let's say it's a first and a half, right? Like first and kind of a first for Tyreek. I would take Tyreek on that almost every day. And again, part of that is this class isn't wowing me, but that 103 after the NFL draft could be a very different looking pick than it is today. So that's the other messy part with this, is that you kind of have to make a trade like this now with Tyreek on the dip and Juju on the bump. But I would really want to hold 103 if at all possible until the draft comes or until you're on the clock, because that will be worth, a lot more then. So it's a timing trade, and I totally love the idea of it. But I would probably just say, screw it. I'm going Tyreek. Let's see how it goes.
And I think I'm with you that I would take the Tyreek side. There's a whole bunch of risk in every single piece in this trade, and I do think it's super close for that reason. But I mean, Tyreek is the one piece of this trade that we know has produced year after year after year in the NFL. So I do think there could be a dip in production with Tyreek,
Oh, sure.
And I like Tua, but going from Mahomes to Tua is a downgrade. So,
did you happen, just real quick to interject on that, did you see some of the stats where Tua had a longer ADOT? I think it was like he had a longer depth of throw or whatever than Mahomes did. Like, Mahomes is great and all, but Tua's not that bad. Everybody's talking about how Tua's a downgrade. I'm actually not sure, honestly. Like,
well, he's a
downgrade. I don't know. We don't know. I'm just saying we don't know.
I'm not saying he's awful or that he's just like a cat. There's this giant chasm, where he's all the way up here and he's all the way down here. But I'm not going to compare Tua to Mahomes. So as much as I like him. So, but like I said, we've seen him produce. The 103 is obviously a risk. Juju has not produced in like 4 years. So it at a difference making level. So
when he was across the field from Antonio Brown, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't do it on his own. I mean, and
it is kind of interesting. This trade is the guy that just left Kansas City for the guy that just came to Kansas City plus a piece. So
perfect trade for content, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to kind of lump these second tier quarterbacks together to try and get through this. So Matt Ryan was traded to the Colts. Jameis Winston came back to the Saints. Marcus Mariota signs a 2-year deal with the Falcons. Jameis got 2 years as well. I don't know if I ever saw the terms of Mariota's deal, but I'm pretty sure Jameis got more.
I'm pretty sure.
And if you want to even throw in Trubisky from last week, if you're me and you had to go out and get one of these guys, Scott, who you going for?
Whoever's cheapest.
Well, who is that then in your mind?
Which of these four QBs? I mean, I'll take. They're all in the same tier, so they're all probably a starter for the next year or two. Pretty much all those deals, specifically the Trubisky and the Jameis deals, did not preclude the teams from adding, doubling down on
I
the
think the
position, right?
Colts are
And I believe the Colts as
I mean, not the
well.
Colts, the Falcons, I think, are going to.
All three of those teams. Well, yeah, Falcons too. All four of those teams could add a quarterback, and that's the smart play. And so, we'll see probably at least two of those teams do it.
The Colts probably won't because they don't have a first round pick thanks to the Eagles.
Yeah, but they're a team that I could see them taking like a Carson Strong type, where it's like they can.
He'd have to be there in the mid-second
round. Yeah, he'll be there. I mean, and he's a pocket passer. He's the arm, but he's got a real low floor, right? So, but you've seen him do it with Phillip Rivers, and now they brought in Matt Ryan. Like Carson Strong kind of fits that mold, right? So if there was a good spot for him to go, I think that would be it. We've heard Willis linked to Pittsburgh, New Orleans. Matt Corral would be great there. Pickett would be great there. So, yeah, I mean, any of these guys could go in, and then that's your dip on those bridge quarterbacks that you can buy. So, all of those guys, I'll take.
Well, that was going to be my answer. Is that don't trade for any of them until after the draft and see what team took a quarterback. That's who you go after.
Right.
And that's actually I've got one team where I don't think I have a starting quarterback at this moment. I had Roethlisberger and Drew Lock were my two quarterbacks last year, and I did not do very well. Consider me shocked, but it's a rebuild, and I knew this going in. And I've been kind of trying to trade for some, like I traded for Chase. You know what I mean? Like I overpaid because I'm like, screw it, I want to have my guy. But no, so like I'm looking at that. Like I think I got Trubisky just before the trade or before he signed, I guess technically. And even then, I'm like, that's still not a starter guaranteed. I mean, I think he probably will be. But I mean, if they get Willis, you know what I mean? I could see Tomlin just saying, all right, we're going to have, you're going to start right away. And we're going to have Trubisky come in if you need you. So I think I would just wait until after the NFL draft to see where it goes. And like Scott said, take the cheapest one. I personally, of the four, I would like to have Matt Ryan myself right now. But I don't think it's enough for me to like target him and go get him. I mean, he may not be the starter either. I mean, so it's weird.
It's funny you said that comment about not having a quarterback on your team, because it made me think I actually had a contending team. It's the league's going into year 3. I made the playoffs the first 2 years, and my quarterbacks are Tom Brady, Jameis Winston, and Marcus Mariota. So 2 weeks ago, I had 0 starting quarterbacks, and now I have 3.
Particularly Petrella. You know what I mean? Like that is such a U team, Rocky. I like
it worked out so well. So, nice. and I think I also have like Taysom Hill on that team, who I had in case after the Jameis injury, I picked him up. So that's why I was able to contend last year.
Let's talk about Taysom, right? He could be a guy there too. We don't know for sure. Like that, obviously the coaching
Sean
change.
Payton's gone. Yeah,
I know, I get that. But at the same time, the guy that took over is from that offense. Like he was there last year. I forget his name now, but like he's coming from that. Maybe there's a package where he's familiar with Taysom. I would laugh so hard if week 1 we see Taysom Hill as a starter and all of us are just throwing like that guy throwing papers in the air. Like, I don't know what's happening anymore. Like, just what the hell? Just total chaos.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I agree with what you said. I don't think it's a bad idea to wait until after the draft. I don't think any of these once they're cemented as their starter, their prices will go up slightly, but it's not like you're gonna have to pay up a lot for Trubisky or Marcus Mariota or even Matt Ryan. And I agree with you too, Andrew. I think Ryan, assuming I think he will be the starter after the draft. I don't think, even if they draft a Carson Strong in the second round, he's not starting or anything. So he's locked in for 2022.
He's the most locked in for me. He's the most steady. But honestly, there are people out there that are now trying to get starter value for Trubisky, like asking a first round pick for Trubisky and stuff. It's like, if that's already his value, I don't see that going up with the NFL draft. I mean, if there are people, that's the classic double count we see all the time, right? Whereas like, you see his value go up because his value is going to go up, and then his value goes up, and it's like, wait, we already did that. You know what I mean? Like we're already valuing him there. So I think there's some pause on a lot of those guys.
I was actually able to move. I had a team with Trubisky and Mills, and it's an auction rookie draft, so it's not quite exactly translating. But I was able to move move Trubisky and Mills for a first and 2 seconds, and I couldn't accept that fast enough. So
I take that.
So I don't know which part of it he was valuing as a first, but I don't value either of them as a first. So I was like, yes, thank you, please give me some auction dollars.
Yeah,
So and Ridley Truther in the chat says that he moved Trubisky in a superflex for a random 23 first, which that is nuts. Whoever did that
would gladly do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would too, but you still need to change your name.
Well, yeah, and I kept in the Cool Kids Club chat. I kept him from changing it to Deontay Truther by stealing that before he could do it. So
He could go by DraftKings Truther.
there you go. And the other big piece of news that I kind of skipped over there. It was obviously Deshaun Watson. That happened, I think, the day after you guys recorded last week.
Yep.
Deshaun Watson. He was definitely going to the Falcons or the Saints. And then just like this drunk NFL season, all of a sudden it's Cleveland. So he goes to the Browns, gets that ridiculous contract, which is a lot of it guaranteed. So are you, I mean, I feel like people were already starting to creep him up there anyway. I feel like he's back and nobody's even worried about a suspension. Nobody's worried about that it's Cleveland and he's a top 5 quarterback again. Are you on board with that, Scott?
Yes and no.
I know that's kind of where I'm at with it because I picked up quite a few Watson shares, but I still am like, Cleveland.
So yeah, I think I'm disappointed a little bit. But I mean, I'm still fine with it. Like I don't know. He's still definitely in that, that top 8. That top 9, whatever you want to call it, right? So to me, that's pretty much one giant tier, and I'm cool with any of those guys, really. So maybe some guys would say, maybe not Dak because he's a little older.
Do you care if he has a half-year suspension?
I don't care in the sense that most teams that I traded for a couple shares, but most of the teams that I had him on already, I likely already had to retool a little bit. It's not like I was competing last year without him. I don't think I can't think of any teams off the top of my head where I lost a top 5 quarterback and then was still one of the top teams. So yeah, I think for that particular situation, being that most of them were rebuilding teams where I knew I would need a year or two, no, it doesn't bother me. I mean, in a startup, he just went 6 in a startup I'm in. So, I mean, he's back, I guess. I mean,
we talked about him on Trade Addict. So I feel like from the community standpoint, it's basically like he's back. No one cares, but I don't think it's going to happen. But what if it's a year? Does that, for either of you, does that change anything? Like you're going to be missing then 2 years of Deshaun Watson.
Well, here, I'll jump in with this then. If it's half a season, if it's 6 games, if it's 3 games, I think it changes his value. It's just not going to be drastic. I think that the reason they're holding on to Baker still is because they're trying to make sure their bases are covered, because you don't really want to trade for Deshaun Watson and go through all that PR bump, take that PR hit, however you want to word it. And then, obviously you trade for Cooper and you get all these new fans that are all frustrated because of the whole drama. And then he's suspended, and then you go back to Baker because it's better than Case Keenum. It's just there's so much drama.
He'll ever play another down.
I don't think he will either, but there's just so much uncertainty
in Cleveland or ever.
Well, in Cleveland, I think you're saying, right? You're
saying
ever.
Yeah, he sucks. No.
I was like, wow, that's a bold take, Scott.
Yeah, you know what? You heard it here first. Baker Mayfield is done.
Well, no. So what I'm saying is, I guess where I'm going with this in a meandering way is, I don't think the team trades all of that stuff for Watson and then keeps Baker also. I think they're holding on to him now because, again, there's no reason to trade him now.
Right.
There's no value in something. They're going to wait till the draft and see if something happens, because in my opinion, what they should do, and this may be the logic they're having anyway, is that it gets to the draft and you get there's going to be some team, and we see it every year, that is looking for a quarterback that doesn't get one, right? Where it's like, so you got 5 or 6 teams looking for quarterbacks. We just went through 4 of them before. We didn't even talk about Seattle, who obviously still has our friend Drew Lock I was talking about. So they're going to need a quarterback. There's a couple other teams that you could see trying to get one. And, Green Bay, maybe they're done with Love and they want to get someone in behind. I mean, we see it all the time, right? Maybe Cleveland gets a quarterback and then they trade Baker for another 2nd round pick, right? We see draft day trades all the time. And the movie Draft Day was about the Browns, and it was about trading So, I mean, like, I would laugh very heartily and at the same time entirely expect a draft day trade for Baker. Mark this down. I'm calling it now. I think that's when they send Baker. I don't think there's any reason to do it before then, because what's the value difference? And once you know who's on the clock and once you know how the draft is going and somebody's screaming for a quarterback, I tell you what, Baker in Seattle is not terrible. You know what I mean? Like, he could easily find a home in Atlanta, right? I mean, like, we've talked about this in Indianapolis even. Like, hell, that'd be weird, but who knows? I mean, there's a couple teams that could use someone like that. So I personally, going back to Watson, personally, I'm not trading for Watson right now, but I would be entirely fine to trade the couple of shares I've got away just to kind of see what's going on and get out in theory while the news is clear. But I'm not sure I want him on my roster. I don't want to be paying attention to the news every week and seeing what charges are coming and all. Like, just not that I mean, yeah, there's a moral twist to it, but it's just stressful. I got enough leagues to worry about. I got enough players with injuries to worry about. Like, I just don't want the drama. I guess maybe that's the way to put it.
It's funny you say that, because we have him on our roster in the Dynasty Junkies Listener League.
I know, and that's why I'm like, maybe we make a move, but I'm willing to just sit and see if someone comes for him too, right? Like, let's just see. Come on, Scott, make a trade.
But I agree with I'm not looking to buy him now. I was buying him the last 10 months for this very reason. So I'm going to be looking to sell him in some leagues where I did pick him up, and maybe one of those is Junkies. Who knows? But yeah, his price is, like I said,
I did make some offers, like after with maybe Mahomes taking a dip. I sent out I think it was Watson and Cooper, the stack for Mahomes, and it was like instant decline. So I mean,
I still don't think people are.
I mean, I would decline that too, but I just thought, hey, maybe they'll counter or something.
I agree with you, man. I would decline that also. Yeah.
Maybe it will happen, but instant reaction, I don't think people are really valuing Mahomes any less yet.
I agree. Yeah.
I think everyone's still. The only thing that changed it all with Mahomes for me personally too is it sort of cements Josh Allen as the obvious 101 in Superflex for me over Mahomes. It was close between the two. When he loses Tyreek, it's Josh Allen. So,
agreed.
Okay. So we had one more thing on there, but I'm not just gonna skip over it. So we're gonna get right into Find Me a Trade, because I was trying to do this part quick, and we're almost a half an hour in. So we're right on schedule for about an hour 45. So we're gonna do Find Me a Trade. As I said, we have 3 leagues. We're kind of piling them up here, trying to we appreciate all the submissions we get, and I always feel bad that we have to leave some hanging out there for we'll get like 12 at a time, and some of them are hanging out there for weeks upon weeks. So we love doing these shows like this, so we can kind of knock some of these out and have these people get their leagues talked about. So the first one, I'm going to go through the settings here, if it's okay with you, Andrew, and maybe you can share the screen and go through the roster when we get to that point. So the first one was submitted by a guy who I think earlier this year submitted a roster. He had 2 different ones he sent in our form, which was Nick Aiken, at Nick Aiken on Twitter. It's a 12-team, half PPR, super flex, 2 tight end with also a 1.0 tight end premium, because it's half PPR, so double tight end premium. 25-man roster, start 11. One of them is a kicker, so really start 10. And it's a QB, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. Again, the 2 tight ends, 1 super flex, and 1 flex, and then the kicker. I'll read his comments, and then you can go into the roster, Andrew. I think my roster fits a contender, deep at wide receiver and running back, but definitely not at quarterback. 3 second-round picks this year to either trade up or take a shot on some prospects who fall. Ideally, don't want to head into the season with Jameson as my QB2. So that kind of tells you a couple people he has on his roster, but Andrew, why don't you go through it?
Sure, yeah. So I'll quickly go through the starting lineup, because those are the better players. We'll hit some of the bench. But, yeah, we got Matt Stafford, Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift. Pretty solid start there. I don't mind that. Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel. Again, solid start at receiver. You got George Kittle, Mike Gesicki at your 2 tight ends. That's not bad in a 2 tight end league. Elijah Moore and Carson Wentz to kind of round this out, which he was saying Winston and Wentz are his kind of QB2 combined, which I totally get his logic of not wanting to go into the season that way. So obviously he's got Winston as his 3rd QB, and that's it for QB. After that, he's got, of Cordero Patterson, a couple other guys at running back. Damian Harris, I guess, is worth mentioning. Darrell Henderson, Keyshawn Vaughn, who might be a thing. There's some depth there, but none of them really stand out. I mean, obviously, Damian Harris is worth something, and maybe Henderson comes back and does something.
By the way, since you mentioned Vaughn, he has a trade in his inbox for Vaughn for Ingram. Don't do that.
No,
not that I care that much about Keyshawn Vaughn, but there's at least a 0.5% chance Keyshawn Vaughn matters. There's 0% chance that Mark Ingram matters.
That's a good point. And we'll keep going here on the receivers. We got Marvin Jones, Robert Woods, Allen Robinson, Odell Beckham Jr., Laviska Shenault, who could have a resurgence if he signs somewhere like the Chiefs. Zay Jones, again, not a bad receiver group at all. Backup tight ends, he's got Foster Moreau and John Bates. So again, not a terrible team. I've seen worse on Find Me a Trade. So this is definitely a contending team in my book, but it does have a couple of holes. So maybe, I guess, Scott, do you want to start with your trade on this one, and we'll kind of go around the circle?
Yeah, so I think this roster is ready to make a move here. He just traded away, I think, Trevor Lawrence and a couple other pieces there, and got the Stafford Cup stack, which was a really nice trade. I like that. He gave up Javonte, but ultimately you got the proven quarterback and the stack. So I love that. You're a little bit heavy now on Rams, and QB2 is definitely still the weak spot.
I just wanted to mention, because you said that, it was hilarious to me when I saw your comment on that. He has Stafford, Cup, Robinson, OBJ, and Woods, who just got traded to the Titans.
Yeah.
It's literally like the entire Rams passing offense before the trade.
Which honestly might not be that bad.
I know.
Go get Sony. Go get Sony. Why not? Let's go get them all, right? Get Van Jefferson. Where's he? What the heck?
Right? Yeah.
Anyway, keep going, Scott.
So that is my trade. Go get Van Jefferson. No, but the nice thing is you've got, there was uncertainty with Wentz and Jameis, and now we know they're both probably starting this year. So that helps you a little bit if you want to kind of, play the game there. So I looked at a couple different angles here. I would like to package either Wentz or Jameis or both, and even give up your 23 first if you need to, because if you're getting a true top quarterback to pair with Stafford, that's going to really make you an instant contender. Based on some of the rosters I looked at, I didn't really find a good scenario for that. But again, that 23 first can change things quickly. If you kind of dangle that out there, somebody might be willing to give up a Watson or something like we just talked about, right? I just picked up Mariota for a 23 second in a league where I needed some quarterback depth, and I just felt like, I have Mahomes and Allen. So, I mean, I'm fine. But it's like, hey, if there, obviously there's bye weeks, there could be injuries, whatever. Yeah. Getting a guy that can help fill in, and then you can play the matchups with Wentz and Jameis, find a guy who gets hot, and then maybe look to move one of those pieces as well to strengthen throughout the season, right? Because again, it is March, so we kind of want to look at this for now and long term. So Team Rudy is the team with Mariota, and you have those 3 seconds. And the thing is, what's going to happen with your 3 seconds if you keep them is that the players there that are going to be of value are wide receivers, but that's your strength. You're already stacked at wide receivers. So you're essentially throwing those picks away by taking wide receivers there. They're not going to start for you, most likely, unless you really hit on somebody that comes out of nowhere. And so then you're just reaching if you're taking other positions with those picks, right? So I'd rather move them for a quarterback that you can play matchups with, or package them with your other quarterbacks to upgrade. So that's kind of the route that I went. It's a small thing, but when you're looking at contending, you want to give yourself some options. And, it's now, but it's also looking towards the future. What else can I do with those picks? What else can I do with those quarterbacks?
Oh, I like it.
I really like the one with and this is going to come as no surprise, the one where you're given the seconds for Mariota or someone in that range. If you can do it with Trubisky or whoever, I'd rather hold on to the 23 first. Even if I'm a contender, I kind of want to hold on to that into the season when I have more information and maybe if I'm going to move it then. And I know who's
Sure.
definitely playing well and
Sure.
who's not and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not that concerned about his QB2. Big surprise again. I actually think Wentz is a little underrated in terms of fantasy. He's not a great real life quarterback, but he generally produces for fantasy. Even last year, everyone thinks he was awful. He was like the QB 13, 14, depending on your scoring. Right. I think that last Jacksonville game is just in everyone's mind, and people think that was like Carson Wentz's season. I don't mind Wentz, and Jameis also looked pretty nice when he was in there. He was very up and down. He had I think 2 4+ touchdown games, and I think he had a 0 touchdown game before he got hurt. So, but I think you can kind of mix and match with those two, and especially when you have Mahomes, even without Tyreek, I'm not as worried about it. But I love the other one. So I guess I'll get right into mine then, since I've been babbling on a little while here. What I was, I think that this is one of the ones I think I came up with. I'm just going to skip one of them so we can save some time. I did have 2. Maybe I'll get into both of them. I don't know. The one I liked better, though, I agree, is definitely a contending team, especially that starting lineup is loaded. So I do like kind of trying to strengthen his team for this year. And I put Gesicki 204. There's 2 seconds, trying to use those 2 seconds to improve the team for Goddard. And I'm not sure that's enough to pull Goddard with the, with Tyreek coming there now. If people are thinking logically, it probably means a downswing for Gesicki because, like I said, I don't think it hurts Waddle that much. I think it hurts players that are not as good as Waddle. So that could be an issue. But I do think Goddard's being slept on a little bit because people, think, and no, they're not totally wrong, that Hurts is not a very good passer. He improved from year 1 to year 2, and he could improve from year 2 to year 3. But there's definitely question marks there. And but even if he doesn't improve that much, he basically was thrown to 2 guys last year, and they're probably going to draft a rookie. I think they have 3 first-round picks. I think they're going to draft one of these receivers in the first round, but who knows how much that guy produces. Plus, the Eagles suck at picking wide receivers, except for Devontae Smith. So I'm not banking that's going to take a lot away from Goddard. It's basically the Goddard and Smith show in the passing game. So I think he's being a little slept on. Not that, people don't like Goddard, but I think he could be in for a big year. So I like improving that spot in a 2 tight end league with a tight end premium. That's huge if you can have 2 guys like that, and with Kittle and Goddard. And the team he'd be trading him to is Team Rudy. He seems to have a major youth movement going on. If you look at his roster, I don't have it in front of me, but I know his guys like Bateman. He had a lot of second-year players and things like that, and a few picks. So he made the extra picks. And for what it's worth, Gesicki is a year younger than Goddard. So what do you think of that one? Does that get Goddard, Andrew?
I'll jump in. I definitely think that the Gesicki-Goddard gap is at least 1 second. It might not be 2 seconds.
You really think so? Even after the trade?
I think it's possible. I think there is some, like we were talking about before, with the rising tide and all boats and all that, Gesicki could see some uptick, right? There is a potential where, if you find the right guy, you find the right manager, I would probably start with Gesicki in the 206 for Goddard just to see what it does. Because I think you're exactly right. Goddard's getting slept on all over the place. There's a lot of people that just don't want any part of that offense. And as a Philly fan, I'm sure there are Sundays where you're screaming at him yourself, yeah, what are we doing here, right? So Goddard is a little frustrating. He's been kind of that next in line after Ertz left, and then it didn't really pop off like we all wanted it to. It was kind of, meh. So I think there is you might be able to get some discount on Goddard, and then maybe even try to sell the Gesicki hype if you hype it up that way. So I don't mind that one at all. And I think you're exactly right too. His team has got Wilson and Fields. He's got T. Higgins, Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore. He's got a lot of young players on that team. And I think if you're looking at it maybe he'll take the Gesicki as a year or 2 younger, if I recall, not much, but something. And he's on the up and coming, and that offense could be about to blow up, right? And then he gets the extra second. I don't know. It could be something to do. So I thought it was a solid offer.
Maybe you could try and make the argument too that Tyreek is that I'm making with Waddle. Where again, I think it hurts Gesicki more than Waddle, but you could try and make the argument to this guy. Tyreek's coming, the whole offense is going to be better.
Kelsey did fine with Tyreek.
Exactly.
Gesicki's the next Kelsey. I mean, you could say that in the group chat, and you never know. Somebody goes, "Dan, that's a good point," because some people just see it myopically, and it could work.
Well, before we go to yours, I'll throw out my second option real quick.
Go for it. Yeah.
I also, the other one I came up with was Allen Robinson and his 204 for Aaron Jones. He mentioned about having decent RB depth, but I kind of didn't think he did. He has Damian Harris and Cordero Patterson as backup guys, but he also has not that injury prone is technically a thing, but those two guys get hurt an awful lot, and DeAndre Swift and Christian McCaffrey. So I think having another guy couldn't hurt. Like Scott had mentioned, both he has a lot of wide receivers and he has a lot of Rams. So this also helps with both of those. And he converts one to running back. I think Aaron Jones is another guy. People really down on him. I don't know if it's swung back around yet, but I do think you probably should be a little higher than you were now that Adams is gone. I feel like they're going to run a lot with both guys. And I know I've seen out on Twitter, I can't remember who posted it, but the splits with Aaron Jones in the receiving game with and without Adams are pretty good. So that he gets a lot more work in the receiving game. So I like Aaron Jones as a guy that's maybe a little undervalued. Allen Robinson has the bump from signing with the Rams, and I still think there's going to be a little gap there. So that's why I threw the 204 in.
I'll go right back and do this one because I'm looking at these rosters and we can pitch it to Scott. But that guy that has Aaron Jones is the guy that got Javonte. So he's got Javonte and Barkley are his other two running backs pretty much to start with, and Mostert after that, which could be a solid 3. But then receiver, he's got Pittman, Ayuk, Thomas, and Van Jefferson, and it drops off a cliff. So I think that's actually not a bad trade either. That gives him a little bit of depth at the receiver place, which this one is a start 3 receiver, if I recall, too, right? So, and a flex. I mean, like, you're going to need receivers. So I thought that was actually, in my opinion, the better of the two trades for both teams, right? Like, you get Aaron Jones, which, again, like you mentioned, could be some value there, but I guess, Scott, what are your thoughts? I know we haven't given you much of a chance to provide your opinion here yet.
You may not have to add that second on. I'm going to start up right now where Aaron Jones went 72 or 71 overall. Wait. No, I just screwed that up. Allen Robinson went 709, which is 81 overall. And Aaron Jones went 702, which is 74 overall. So literally just a few spots apart there in a startup. So, I get a lot of my value this time of year from startups because it just
more
gets
accurate,
the chance to pick the player, right? And that's the player they took. So
you could even say like maybe LaVisca closes that gap, right? One of those like high upside guys like A-Rob and LaVisca for Aaron Jones, right? I mean, like something like that where it's like there are people that are all the way out, but there are people that think he might still have a chance. So I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if he has one. Yeah, maybe you even start with like he doesn't have a third, but maybe A-Rob and the 211 he has, and then maybe you up it if you have to.
Right. Yeah.
So Andrew, I think we did not do yours for this one.
Not yet, no. And I had one I put on the sheet that I'll talk about, and then I kind of came up with another one I wanted to mention and just kind of popped in my head. So the one I put on the sheet was first and foremost looking at this. I love when we can pull this up because you can see who's interested in players. Right, you got the trade block, and you've also got the heart sign button when someone's interested. So I looked, and Winston has somebody who's interested in him, and I'm like, well, who the hell is that? That's what we got to do. And it's team Ralph's bunch, right? And I'm like, okay, well, Ralph's bunch has Murray, Carr, Trubisky, and Mayfield at quarterback. And at some point, he clicked a heart by Jameis Winston, and I'm like, okay, so he may not really value him as a true quarterback, or maybe it was left over from last season. I mean, who knows, right? So my trade was going to be
it clears on rollover.
Yeah, it does clear. You're right. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying like before anything happened, it could have been like as soon as it rolled over, you go in and put stuff.
Gotcha.
You never know. And I don't know how accurate those are. Sometimes I've had a guy that was like, I don't even know how I clicked that. Like I was just clicking the wrong place. But my trade was to trade Winston to Ralph's bunch since he seemed interested for Baker and the 311. And the logic going here, you could try to sell this like Baker's a backup. He's never going to play again. Like the person who has Baker maybe just wants out, and he's got 3 other quarterbacks if you count Trubisky as a starter. Like he may not need Baker. He may just want off that roller coaster. And then I say 311, but like any little piece just to see what you can get. Because then, of course, if he goes, that's too much, you just say, okay, never mind. We'll just do a QB trade. I think I would not be shocked if Baker plays more snaps, more downs, more whatever than Winston this year. Winston got hurt last year. I think that offense is more likely to draft somebody, in my opinion. I think Baker goes somewhere where they need him. So yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a world where Baker plays more and has more fantasy value than Winston. And for me, it's a weird player for player kind of trade, but I would say you've got a higher floor with Winston, but a higher ceiling for Baker. And on this team, I'd rather have a higher ceiling QB3, I guess. I mean, am I crazy here, Scott, or do you kind of see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I agree with that. Baker could end up playing more and definitely still has a higher ceiling. I mean, I don't think I could get myself to do it just because I don't like Baker, but but I don't disagree with what you said. It's it's just personal.
They're
preference,
both crappy QBs.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a little
agree.
trade.
Yeah.
Rocky, you got a piece of advice for us on this one before I go to my other one?
I think when I like Winston better. I think Winston might even have the higher ceiling. Like I said, he had with nobody to throw to. He had, like I said, last year, two in only like 6 games. He had a 4 touchdown game. He had a 5 touchdown game. And I do think he starts the year. I mean, they did give him. It's not, primo starter money, but they did give him $28 million, 21 guaranteed. I think their plan is to start him this year. They may even draft a quarterback. If they do, I bet they do not start that guy at all this year unless Jameis just starts throwing like 20 picks.
I've seen it happen, yeah.
but he seemed to come around last year. He was doing a lot better. They were limiting his volume a little, but he was not throwing the picks. So I would rather have Winston, I think, than Baker, especially because Baker does not have a team. And the spots are kind of limited right now. To me, it's basically Seattle and Carolina, and that's kind of it.
I agree. Yeah, and I think there's a couple where like Atlanta, you could try to fight for it and all of that. And maybe, I mean, you could say Washington with Wentz even, like there's some of those places where you could see it being like, but I guess my point though is you're the prime trade candidate then, right? If I have Winston and I'm trying to sell high because I think his value is going down, and I'm trying to buy Baker low, assuming his value is going back up, it's a pure speculative market kind of trade, right? And if you're on the other side going, I think Winston's the better guy, would you take Winston for Baker straight up if these were our two teams and this was the way it was set up? If I sent Winston just asking for Baker, would you say yes to that?
Yes.
See, and this is exactly what I love about this, because I would be like, no, give me Baker every day, right? But this is what I mean. Like everybody has their own valuation on this. And especially with players like these two, there is no set in stone value for these guys, especially in March. You know what I mean? Like we have no clue what the next 2 days are going to hold. I mean, the NFL's been like the NBA lately. It's just crazy. So yeah, that's kind of where
if Baker, and like you said, it is a speculative trade. So if say Baker were to go to Seattle, it does become a lot. I mean, I kind of agree with Scott that I'm not sure that Baker is all that good, but he's got DK Metcalf to throw to, possibly Lockett, Fant. So if that were to happen, he does have a crappy line, but it would definitely, that would be kind of interesting. But if you were to end up with the Falcons, like you said, as one possibility, or Carolina, even it's basically just DJ Moore and I guess dump offs to CMC. I'm not sure I like that as much, but if it happened to where he did end up in Seattle, that it becomes a lot closer to me.
Oh, I agree. And that's kind of why you have to make that kind of trade now, as the speculations, you're kind of buying the dip and selling on I mean, it's purely just trying to read the market and read the tea leaves. The other one that I had, which was, I think, a much simpler trade with the same guy, and this is kind of why it kept in my brain, was something where you send Elijah Moore for Derek Carr. And the logic here is Elijah Moore, and they're on DLF, they're pretty close. And Elijah Moore has got a lot of upside. There's a lot of people that really like him. And on this team, he's got Murray, Trubisky, Mayfield. He might be like, you know what? I do need some receiver depth with Murray. Maybe he's got Kamara and Mixon are his only 2 running backs. He's got ETN, I guess, my bad. But like this guy might be looking at this like, maybe I turn into a rebuild, and Moore is easier. He's younger, obviously. He's easier to get value around. So, I mean, again, I don't know if that trade gets done just flat out. It might take some extra pieces, but that's the kind of thing where you send a receiver and get a quarterback. That's pretty hard to do, but sometimes that's the kind of trade you need to make. You go after the QB heavy teams and, see what you can send. I guess, Rocky, what are your thoughts on that one? We'll bounce it right back to you.
I don't hate that one. I kind of think Elijah Moore is a little overrated right now. I do think there's a lot of people that are very high on him. I do love him as a player. I liked him coming out last year. And I know he had a stretch where he was really, really good, but it's still Zach Wilson throwing to him. And I've made my feelings clear about Zach Wilson. He scares the hell out of me. I think some of those good games were with White or Flacco. I can't remember. But I'm scared to trust anybody in a Zach Wilson offense. And everything you hear, they are going to draft. They have 2 first-round picks. There's a lot of smoke that they're going to draft a receiver. which
Well,
again doesn't necessarily kill his value, but as I don't trust Elijah Moore the way I trust Jalen Waddle either, though. So depending on that receiver, he could be the alpha. And I'm not sure Elijah Moore is good enough yet that he's just going to be fine when with Zach Wilson at quarterback and possibly a better prospect coming in.
Well, it's just another prime, sell high, buy low kind of a thing. And I'm not even saying buy low for Derek Carr. I just feel like if you're going to get like a second tier, a QB2, right, and you're sending a wide receiver to that's much younger and has a potential upside that could be seen as higher. I mean, there's people out there that might take that trade straight up. Maybe you need to add a pick, but I'm not against that.
And I do think Carr is kind of one of those like my kind of quarterback guys now, especially. He sort of was in the past, but he didn't have the upside. I think like a lot of guys like Kirk Cousins is a guy I always talk about because he's ADP mid QB2 and he finishes low end QB1. That's the guy I'm looking at. Stafford even I don't know if he still is now, but for most of the last year even he was QB14, QB15 because he wasn't young or whatever. And he finished in the top 10. So I think Carr has that capability now that his touchdown upside can go up. He had the yardage even last year. I think he threw for 4,800 yards last year, but they didn't have the touchdowns, and now he has Devontae Adams. So yeah, I like getting Carr. I don't think his value has gone up, but I still don't think it's kind of just not people that a lot of people are aiming to get Derek Carr. Yeah. I don't think so. And there's been a lot of hype around Elijah Moore ever since he had those games in season. So I kind of like that. It's kind of you're giving the overvalued guy for the undervalued guy.
Yeah. What do you think, Scott? Where are you at with those two players, with Moore and Carr?
Well, the thing about Moore, so they gave Berrios a pretty decent contract, and he is a slot guy. But Moore's best position is to play in the slot. So are they going to play him outside? Like, is he going to be the X? Is Corey Davis going to be the X and he'll be the Z? I mean, I don't know what they're doing with that, but obviously it's, does Moore play? Think about this. Is Moore the Ayuk role? And then, they don't have a Debo, obviously. Who does?
Not yet.
But
the draft, right? Yeah.
But yeah, right. Do they take like a Treylon Burks and then he's like the Debo role, and then Moore is the Ayuk role? I mean, I suppose that could make sense. If you go back to like, was it? Think about Julio, totally different player, obviously, and Corey Davis can't play that role either, like they had in Atlanta with Shanahan. But obviously that offense is versatile and they can move those guys around, and I'm sure Moore will play inside, and sometimes they'll line up with two slots and whatever else. They don't really have a proven tight end. They signed Uzama, who's meh. So
and Conklin, I think too, right? So like they're just trying to see what they got.
I mean, that's blocking, that's solidifying the O-line and all that. So I have no issue moving Moore. I do like him. But if you're talking about getting a quarterback who just upgraded big time, like, I definitely would be down to do that. And I mean, I think Carr is somebody, it might be hard now after the year he just had, but man, in the past, I mean, I got Derek Carr a couple of years ago for like a late second. I mean, isn't that
those are the days?
Like, and I don't even like Derek Carr, but it was just like, how could I not do that? You know what I mean? Like, in Superflex, you just have to take those quarterbacks and see what happens, because even if he flamed out, like, who cares? What else was I going to get with that pick? So, having the opportunity to get a starter, and now look at what he has: new offense, new weapons.
Devontae Adams, obviously, everybody's hyping it up, right? His old buddy. But I think to kind of get to your point, I mean, I'm not terribly high on Moore either, and that's kind of why I looked at that as he's ECR 17 in Dynasty, according to Fantasy Pros, Elijah Moore. Like, wide receiver 17, he's ahead of guys like Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, Jerry Jeudy. I get it, but I also am like, and that might be my out. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm looking at that, like, is he going to get much higher? I mean, yeah, he could go over guys like Godwin, Moore, McLaurin, like, but he kind of needs everything to hit exactly right. And I'm kind of with Rocky. I'm not sure that's going to happen with Zach Wilson. So I thought that was a prime candidate to get away. And then Carr is someone I don't mind targeting as a QB2. And for this kind of team, Carr is the perfect QB2 for a team like this, in my mind. And then have Wentz as your QB3 for bye weeks or injuries, what have you. I mean, you're not relying on him that way. I mean, Carr would easily be the starter over those guys. So Yeah, and I think there is some potential to, find a better option if you need to add some pieces. But that's kind of where my head was at. And we've all done a ton of talking on this team, which I think is helpful because this guy needs to win a championship. He needs to win something. So yeah, I guess do you want to move on to the next one, or do we anything else we want to talk about here?
Yeah, let's move on to the next one. I will. We'll just for each one. You can go through the roster, Andrew. I'll do the settings. 14 team PPR Superflex submitted by Zaner75 at Zaner75. No tight end premium with this one. 25-man roster, start 10. But again, got a kicker and a defense in this one. So it's more like a start 8 in terms of offensive players. QB, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight ends, super flex, and then the kicker and defensive special teams. League is entering its 3rd season. He's been streaming tight end for 2 seasons. After the first season, he had a decent plan for aiming a attention window starting this year or next, 22-23, by looking to add around my QB room. And then he overachieved in 2021, making the playoffs. He says, with the youth of my core pieces at quarterback and wide receiver, I'm not too interested in taking on depreciating assets, and which makes it difficult for me to see the upside for dealing away a QB without getting one back, which is what most of my league mates want when discussing trades. Biggest hole is tight end, so that may make the easiest trades to find. Not sure about the value difference of the tight end after the top 7-8. And streamers is worth giving up QB depth, but I'm open to any and all suggestions.
All right, so we'll quickly run down his team here. And again, this is a 14-teamer. That obviously changes things in my book. It's a little bit harder to get QBs in 14 teams, right?
Yes.
It's a little bit harder, just a little bit, and that matters. So his QBs, he's got Herbert and Jackson to start off with, and then Wentz, Drew Lock, Jordan Love, Zach Wilson. So that's a solid QB room. That's all he has. So that's a solid QB room in a 14-teamer. I would do my best to hold on to all of that, because you're going to need it, and it may have more value in November anyway. Running backs, he's not wrong. He's a little light on running back. He's got James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson, Cordell Patterson, Samaje Perine, Chris Carson, who knows what's going on with him, Rashad Penny, Mike Boone, and Dearness Johnson, and Derek Gore, Keyshawn Vaughn. Like, the names just keep coming for the depth, but at the top, it's real light. I mean, Connor's not terrible, but it's not who I like to go in with. Receiver, you've got T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney. And down here, we got Julio Jones, and that's it for receiver. So again, not a bad receiving group, but it's paper thin. I mean, you have 1 or 2 injuries and you're stuck. Now, granted, you only have to start 2, and then there's a flex, so you might be able to get away with that. Tight ends, Josiah DeGuara. I love it. Josiah DeGuara, Tyree Jackson, and Kyron Granson. Whoa, buddy, that is paper thin. You are right there on the edge of nothingness. And then kicker and defense, I don't care about, so I'm not going to go into it. But the point I'm looking at is it's a middle team in my book, but it's definitely QB heavy. This is the kind of team that if you're sending a QB, you need to get a haul. You need to get a ton of stuff back if you're sending a QB and not getting one in return. So I kind of get why his league mates are asking him for that, because no one else has quarterbacks. You know what I mean? In a 14-teamer, everybody's looking at 1 or 2 QBs most likely, and this guy's got them all. And so they're trying to send him offers and build him up. He's going to need a lot. So, Rocky, what was yours? Since we started with Scott last time, what was your trade that you found for this guy?
Okay, so the one I came up with was I don't think he's a playoff team this year, even though I can kind of squint and see how he sort of did it last year. Yeah. But I'm not real confident, even if he makes the playoffs, that this is not a title winning team.
No. In a 14-teamer.
Yeah. And I'm not sure he can even make the moves to get it there with this season. So I'm not too worried about 2022. So I'm moving James Conner and the 111 to Team Mile High Magic, Jeff Olson, for 108 and 201. And basically, I'm thinking that this, Connor got a little bit of a value bump re-signing with the Cardinals, especially that it was a 3-year deal, decent amount of guaranteed money. Looks like he's the starter for at least the next 2 years. Plus Edmonds left. So good time to move him, especially if you don't think you're going to contend this year. And the guy that has those picks that I'm looking for has a roster that's ready to compete, except at running back. Do I have his roster up?
I've got
he has Murray. I have it. He has Murray. He's got Lawrence. He's got A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Mike Evans, George Kittle. He has 0 almost at running back. He has Leonard Fournette, and then his next best guy is maybe Ronald Jones. I don't know.
Trace Sermon? I don't know. Like, there's no RB2.
Yeah. So
It's
he's
disgusting.
like a prime candidate for a trade like this.
Yep.
Basically what I'm doing is I felt kind of like getting 108 for Connor is probably hard to do. And the next pick I think the guy had was like 205 or something like that, and that seemed like too little. Or no, I think what I was thinking is that it was the 201. A 201 seemed too little to me, especially in a 14-teamer where that's pick 15. I think you need a little more than that to give Connor away. So I'm kind of using his value to bump up the pick from 111 to 108. And then you get the extra pick in 201, get 2 shots at kind of improving your team for 2023. And like I said, the other guy can feel like, okay, well, I'm still in the first round. Plus, I got myself an RB1 to compete this year. So Scott, what do you think?
I definitely always love selling James Conner. It's like my favorite
right?
thing to do. So, having acquired 2 shares at the trade deadline last year, getting me championships was awesome, but he didn't really help because he got hurt. So seeing him resign in AZ was awesome because now I know I can hopefully sell those shares. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with the overachieving part, and 14-team league rosters are a little bit thinner. You can make a run. If you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. But
especially since there's only 8 real starters.
Tend to agree.
True.
Yeah, right. So, but you're right. He's probably not contending right away. So, yeah, I like the move overall. Definitely. The big thing for me is going from that 111 to the 108 because the 108 right now is the cutoff. It's it's one of those top 3 running backs, one of those top 3 wide receivers, and then one of the top 2 quarterbacks, which is where I have it. Even though I don't even know who that second quarterback is, we know one of them's going to jump up there, right? So I feel really good about that 108, whereas 111 is just one of like 17 receivers. And
or you got to hope somebody falls. You just got to like pray somebody skips and misses somebody. Or
I think it's going to be a top 8 as of right now. We'll see. The draft will change everything, of course, but I like that move.
And this is another team where I had sort of a second idea, but it wasn't quite as concrete. So I wanted to throw it out to you two. I was looking at it and I was trying to move Zach Wilson to somebody because, again, I hate Zach Wilson, but I think he has value, especially in a 14-team superflex. And I was looking at a team, and I wish I did not write the team name down. Maybe Andrew can find it while I'm talking.
No, you're good with B-Mead.
Okay, and it was for DK Metcalf, and I did not put it down as a trade. I'm not saying straight up. I'm curious, in a 14-team superflex, given DK Metcalf has kind of fallen, and I was going to mention too, if I actually did put a trade down, I really like the idea of more doing this trade even after the draft, because like I said, I think they're going to draft a Drake London or somebody like that might bump Wilson's value up a little more. I'm just curious what you guys think. Which side do you have to add to, and how much?
Well, okay, so I'll jump in here. The thing that I wanted to hit on first was the DK Metcalf manager, B-Mead 6, has him on the trade block. So
I did notice that too.
That says something to me too, right? Where it's like, okay, this guy's willing to move DK Metcalf. That's a lot of value. That helps a lot. I personally would say DK Metcalf greater sign Zach Wilson. I would like to add a little more to Zach Wilson, even in a 14-team, 2 QB, superflex, whatever you want to call it. But looking at this guy's roster, he's got Rodgers, Garoppolo, Minshew. Yeah. Like he really only has Rodgers. I could see it being the exact opposite in this context, where I would say you need to add a little bit to DK to try to get Zach Wilson. Now, I would probably do DK plus something else for a better QB and not target Zach Wilson. I might try to pivot up to a Lamar and be like, hey, let's go DK plus a first round and, see what I can get to a solid starter, because Rodgers could retire in week 2. I mean, you could be entirely without QBs on this team. So, again, this context, I think it looks probably more like Wilson's worth more, but flat value straight up, who am I taking first in a startup? It's probably DK. What about you, Scott? Same page?
You have to find the team that needs Zach Wilson, right? And so this guy, this B Mead 6, it's the guy I also came up with a trade with. I think you're going to trade with him at some point because you guys just have opposite strengths.
They're puzzle pieces that just fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep.
Do you want to go into yours then, Scott?
Yeah,
since it's on that same team.
So what I ended up doing is, since every one of our teams had Wentz on them, all three of our teams this week, I knew that Rocky wanted me to trade him away at some point. So I found the one that
I'm not the biggest Wentz fan, I can tell you that.
And
shocker.
So this B Mead 6, his logo is the Washington logo. So
good point.
He does have a lot of Washington players already, and maybe he doesn't like Wentz because he was an Eagle or whatever reason. But hey, he's a Washington fan. Let's give it a shot. The other thing is Darnell Mooney right now. I just traded 2 shares of him because people are paying like way too much, in my opinion. So sell. Like, he's just not. I love him. Like, as a Bears fan, I love Mooney, and I'm stoked that we have him and that he's really good for how small he is and came out of nowhere and all that. But fantasy wise, I don't know, man. So my move here was send Wentz and Mooney to B Mead 6 for A-Rob and the 105. And that 105 could get you another quarterback if you wanted.
It could even be a boat.
It could get you one of those running backs. It could get you one of those young wide receivers. But here's the thing. With 14 teams, when you have Herbert and Lamar Jackson, like, you're good. You're set. So you can trade away. If you're saying the guys in your leagues won't trade a quarterback without giving one back or whatever, fine. Just trade one then. Send Wentz away. Who cares? Or, Drew Lock, if he ends up being the starter, absolutely trade him away. Trade him away. He's not going to start for the next 10 years. Just trade him away then. You don't need to get a quarterback back. The thing is, ultimately, about this team significantly overachieving, this is the perfect example of what I always say, again, based on my experience. It's not statistical, and Rocky disproves it based on how he plays. But when you have Herbert and Lamar Jackson in a 14-team league, 2 top quarterbacks can just about win you a league without much else. This roster does not have a top 18 running back, a top 12 wide receiver, or even a top 50 tight end. And you got what, 4th? You know what I mean? Like if he was on the other side of the bracket, would it have been different? You know what I mean? Like, a little bit of luck once you get in. And, if Lamar was healthy, what would have happened, right? I mean, this team could have won. So that's what's crazy about it. He literally has essentially no studs, basically, other than the 2 quarterbacks, and almost won. So I'm just saying, based on my experience, again, I've seen this occur more than having a stacked roster and no quarterbacks. Winning,
I take offense to that, Scott.
But but you always have one. You usually have at least one, and then maybe you rotate kind of that second one.
Well, and a lot of times what I have too is I have a stud who's not highly valued. I have like 10 Tom Brady shares, who was like the QB2 last year.
Kirk Cousins,
in Dynasty, he's a third.
Right. So I mean, here's the thing though about the tight ends. I would just continue streaming them. Honestly, I don't really care. He has the 211. Throw that out for. I gave the example of Evan Ingram. He's in a new situation. It's Peterson uses the tight end. He's got a young quarterback. I mean, the 211. What are you getting with that? Again, one of 48 receivers. So who cares? Just throw it out there. Find one guy. But look at this. Look at the waivers right now. Hayden Hurst is on the waiver wire. Mo Alley Cox is on the waiver wire. Cameron Brate, Oliver, Hopkins, all these guys. Just go pick these guys up. Just go pick them up.
They're
because
free.
Just keep churning them and until one of them hits or one of them gives you 3 or 4 good games. Like, how many people picked up Tanyan off waivers that, a couple of years ago, and he was tight end 4 that season.
Yep.
So you don't really have to make a move for one if you, again, trade from your depth of quarterback and then work the wire for your tight end. And honestly, you'll be closer to a contender than this roster appears to be just by doing that.
Yep.
I agree with what you said about the waivers, and I love the Evan Ingram idea. I think there is so much hate for Evan Ingram, and especially I think
I'll
by
take
people
him.
who have him on the rosters. So and the 211 is nothing though, but there are definitely many people who would do that just to like get Evan Ingram off my roster, and I think.
Definitely.
He could have a decent. I mean, he's not going to be a difference maker, but he could be a guy you can rotate in, like you're talking about on Jacksonville. I think, especially if Lawrence makes a jump, and Peterson. I mean, again, it may have to do with the fact that he had Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, but he used the tight end in his offense quite a lot. So,
and the manager in this league that has Evan Ingram has George Kittle and Irv Smith. He doesn't need Ingram.
Yeah.
Like you might actually be able to get him for less than that, or get him as a throw-in on that other trade you were talking about, Rocky. That's Jeff Olson, right? So like that's a prime candidate to try to help bolster your room without paying a ton of money. I mean, honestly, tight ends, if you're streaming them, you're already paying attention to the waivers. You're already paying attention to that. Might as well just keep going. It worked okay last year. I don't mind that logic at all, Scott. I think that's actually a pretty solid argument you got there. You guys want to get into mine then?
let's do yours.
Andrew.
Because mine was kind of, what was that?
Yeah, let's get yours, Andrew.
Yeah, I think this one's my favorite of the three. I felt proud about this one. So kind of piggybacking on what Scott said, where you trade from your position of depth, which is quarterback. I also agree that this team, I think, would make me feel better. I would sleep easier at night knowing I had a solid tight end. As much as I like the logic of streaming, having one you can set and forget isn't bad. And especially in a start 8 when you're, really having to consolidate and get your best players in the lineup. And then again, your running backs are just, like there's a lot of them, but none of them are terrific. So mine was to trade Wilson and the 111, which like we said, is not that great to me. Even in a 14-teamer, I'm not excited about the 111. So trade Wilson and the 111 for Dobbins and Freiermuth for Jeff Kurz or whatever. And I'm looking at this like Dobbins. I mean, there's some question marks around him. We don't know how he's going to play, but this current manager has Barkley, Harris as his running backs outside of Dobbins, but his quarterbacks are Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones, and Ian Book. You know what I mean? Like Zach Wilson could be the QB1 on that team in a year, right? Like literally Hurts may not play. Jones may lose to Tyrod Taylor. I mean, like you need a really good quarterback on that team right now if you're going to have any chance to contend. And Wilson ain't going anywhere. So we all hate Wilson. But it also gives this guy another pick if he's feeling like a rebuild. And then adding Dobbins and Freiermuth to this team, I feel like just makes me feel like, okay, I don't have to worry too much. I don't like buying running backs this time of year, but I mean, I just feel like that would just bolster this team and make it a contender. And Rocky, what do you think about that? Am I on the right page here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I like moving Zach Wilson. You have to bank on this guy kind of being higher on Zach Wilson than I am, I think, to make that work. Because Dobbins and Freiermuth are both pretty attractive assets to get rid of.
Yep.
But I think it could be done, especially like I said, with my Metcalf trade, I would probably wait until draft time. Because like I said, it looks like if they don't take one in the first, they're almost certainly taking one in the second, the Jets, a receiver. And a lot of those second round receivers are going to be, guys in the fantasy community who are big name guys. It could be like Pickens makes it till the second or somebody like that. So yeah, I mean, I would probably wait till after the draft to kind of bump Wilson's value up more. But in a 14 team, a second-year quarterback who seems locked in should have some pretty decent value. And I think Freiermuth for the 111 is pretty good value. So you're kind of getting Dobbins for Wilson, and I would do that. I mean, again, 14 team quarterbacks a lot, so that makes sense that I think he should think about doing it, and I would definitely take it on our guy's side because I'm with you. I love both of those players.
Well, and it's the QB tax in a 14 team league. You're going to have to overpay. It's just this is what the price is. And I mean, again, the 111 is not a bad piece. I'm just not excited about it. That might actually be the kind of trade I wait to see who's on the board at 111 before I even send it over. Right? Like I don't even talk about this until I'm on the clock at 111, where we know everything at that point, or as much as you can. And you're on the clock at 111, you see nothing. Maybe this is a trade you keep in the back pocket and send over. And the guy's like, hey, you know what? I'm out. I'm done. I'm ready. So yeah, what do you think, Scott?
I almost did this exact trade. But what it came down to for me was having Herbert and Lamar gives you the luxury of waiting on Wilson. Like if he sucks, he sucks. But if he hits, his upside is far greater than whatever you're going to get out of Wentz for the rest of his career. So I just felt like I'd rather take the gamble on him to see if he comes out and has a good, even if he has the first few good weeks after adding a receiver in the draft and, whatever. I don't know what his schedule is right now, but what if that happens? And then what if you could get way more for him? Right. So I like the trade because again, I almost put the exact same one on here. I just felt like, taking that gamble is something I would be willing to do considering the other two quarterbacks that he has.
I wonder if we combined our trades though, and we did like Wentz and 111 for Dobbins. You know what I mean? Like something like that.
Right.
Where it's like you still move Wentz, he's still a QB, he's still starting, right? And you still get rid of 111, which again is still some value. And Dobbins is, and you just leave Freiermuth off and you stream tight ends.
That.
It's like our two trades had a baby, Scott. I think that's the ideal one. That's perfect.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Oh. Title of the episode: Our two trades had a baby. I was just gonna say though, in reference to your Wilson, I do like the idea of, well, like I said, I keep saying it after the draft. Now, because I do think after the draft, if they draft a name wide receiver, that might be the highest value Zach Wilson has for the rest of his career if he doesn't play well this year. So, I kind of think this is more of a, I know you say, Andrew, a lot, why are we doing this now, quote unquote, but really a month from now. But I think that might be the perfect time to do it is late April, early May. So let's get into league number 3. Okay. This was submitted by Miller at Miller Mears on Twitter. His team is a 12-team. His league is a 12-team half PPR super flex. Again, no tight end premium. Excuse me, 25-man roster, start 10. Thankfully, no kickers or defense this time. QB, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, super flex, and 2 flex. Says, I'm a playoff team, but not one of the top tier ones. My main goals in a trade would be any of the following: improve the QB position, get younger at running back, increase depth / get assets to actually be able to make future moves. See my team as a contender, and the young elite wide receiver core should be enough to keep me in the mix for the foreseeable future. However, I really don't have many picks and have an aging, shallow running back core and shallow QB room. And then he mentions a couple guys who might be difficult to trade with. So, Andrew, why don't you go through his roster?
Yep, sounds good. All right, so this one is a Mahomes league. And anytime we get a Mahomes team, I'm always like, ooh, exciting. So he's got Pat Mahomes and then our buddy Carson Wentz. Or his quarterbacks. Every team. Yep. And I don't think he's got, he doesn't have any other quarterbacks in a super flex. So Mahomes and Wentz, unless I'm missing something, that is the only QBs on your roster.
Yep,
that is an interesting angle. Then at running back, you got Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon. And then it kind of drops off. You got Miles Sanders, Savon Ahmed, Chris Evans, Tony Pollard has some value. We were kind of talking about that in our chat. Mike Boone, Phillip Lindsay, who knows where he's going to go. Mark Ingram. So again, not a terrible running back room, but there's some questions there. Yeah, definitely needs to get younger. I would agree with that logic. Receivers, I love these receivers. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Jalen Waddle. Whew, man, now you got 2 of my guys right there, obviously. And then Jalen Waddle, who we were talking about. And then after that, it's Kenny Galladay. Oh, boy, I don't like where this is going. Jarvis Landry, Allen Robinson, Michael Thomas, Paris Campbell, Jacoby Myers, Julio Jones. Okay, it picks up. That's not too bad, right? That's an okay receiver room. Then you got Zach Ertz and George Kittle as your tight ends. I mean, again, I think there is no tight end premium, and you only start 1, so he's using Kittle in his other flex. Not a terrible move, but again, after those 2, you're a little light. So I'll jump into mine first on this one because I mentioned it already. Anytime we get a Mahomes team, my first thought is, I'm trading Mahomes. I just want to see what you can get for him. So my thought was to trade Mahomes, which again, not selling low, but trade Mahomes to Arkillen 88 for Russell Wilson, the 109, and a 2023 second. And the logic I would say here is I think Wilson is going to do great this year and have a couple years left of being a top 10 quarterback, especially in that new offense with new weapons. I don't think Mahomes is dead or anything like that. I think you might even be able to get more than this, but this allows you to kind of pivot off of Mahomes, keep a QB1, get younger at 109, and that 23 second is a good piece that you could trade in other trades. But again, the logic here is you're downgrading from Mahomes to Wilson and adding some slots to get some youth, which I think your team could probably use, or use those to package up and to kind of, get back into a starting lineup kind of an idea. So I guess, Scott, we'll start with you. What do you think about that trade? Any thoughts on that idea of trading Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, this might be one of those scenarios where you do trade Mahomes, right? Occasionally that is the right move. It seems counterintuitive, but at the same time, when he's your only quarterback, basically, I mean, I guess he has Wentz, but I mean, I don't know if now's the time to sell, unfortunately, just because of recent news. But obviously, I still think he's pretty far up there. You could probably, I mean, I don't think I would sell him for that. To be honest,
I'm thinking you could ask for more. This is kind of where my basis was, like, that's where I'd start, and I'd see what other pieces interested you, or like, throw in like a Lindsay or a Boone or somebody else to kind of add a little bit just to make it seem like it's more pieces when it's not. And
I'd want a 23 first for sure.
That's where I was at. I was looking at it and I was like, I like the idea, but I was wondering the same thing. Is that enough to move Mahomes? So like you said, I don't know if he has a 23 first. Maybe you throw a 23 first in there, and I mean, maybe he doesn't want Mahomes for Wilson 109 and a 23 first.
He has 23 first. So
there you go. Maybe he's a little more loose with them having three of them. So maybe
he's got four. He's got 4 23 first. So this guy's trying to do that J Mike Invitational. He's trying to get them all.
But if you can turn that into Mahomes, it's not a bad thing either.
And Kyle brings up a great point. It doesn't increase the number of quarterbacks. So I think that's why you'd almost have to take one with 109, or with that 23 first, you'd have to plan on kind of punting this year and taking one with that pick.
No, and that's kind of where I'm looking at it as, just getting Wilson. You're getting through the season and see, again, if he mentioned too, he's a playoff team, but not one of the top ones. Like, he's in the middle, and I don't like being in the middle. And I think too, of the 3 teams, this is the one that I feel like has the most, it's going to sound backwards in a way, but has the most work, but is also the most fun. Like, you've got guys like Jamar Chase, you've got Joe Mixon, Ezekiel Elliott and Pat Mahomes. Like, you've got these big names. It's flashy, but the depth isn't there to win the title. So like, this is the kind of team I would love to take over as an orphan and just like blow it up to the studs almost. And that you're probably right. Now is a bad time to trade for Mahomes. There's a lot of question marks. Wait till they draft another receiver, or they trade for, or sign somebody else, who knows. But I know there's some talk about them with a whole bunch of different players. But after that, then you get even more. So you're probably right. But I just like the skeleton of that trade, like, getting a first. He doesn't have any picks. This guy, Miller, only has 1 4th-round pick in the draft this year. So my thought too is like, well, you're adding a first this year, which again, I agree with you though, Scott. 108, 109 is right, that line for me. But you always have someone in a draft that'll reach and take like a Justin Ross at 106, and you're like, what? But great for me at 109. You know what I mean? Like, so it happens, I feel like, in every draft. So I don't mind 109 to get a guy this year. You might get lucky and get a quarterback there. Hell, maybe there are 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the first this year after all. And, teams go nuts and draft them. Who knows? So, yeah. But yeah, I guess, Rocky, did you have any other thoughts? And then did you want to jump into yours? Uh-oh. I think Rocky might be frozen. Well then, Scott, okay. Why don't we jump into yours?
Well done. All right. So another Wentz thing here. When you have Mahomes, you kind of have that flexibility to, take risks, make moves, whatever. Heavy on the Bengals too. I tried to incorporate that into the trade. So I added Mixon here in this case, though. I'd really like to move Higgins in some way. But honestly, I don't mind having Jason Higgins. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world.
No.
So all right, my trade here is Wentz, Mixon, and then try one of the old guys like Michael Thomas or A-Rob to the classic 11 for Ryan Tannehill, Josh Jacobs, and Michael Pittman. This gets you a lot younger, even though the names aren't sexy or flashy in any way. Like Jacobs isn't even a guy that I've liked in the past, but I feel like he's got good opportunity. He's still very young. Tannehill is underrated. They've added, they just traded for Woods. They added Austin Hooper. They're likely to draft a running back who might be able to catch more than 6 passes a year, like unlike Derrick Henry. So I just think that there's opportunity there for Tannehill as that division gets better. He's going to have to step it up. And, he's only 33. So people think like, well, Tannehill's old and everything. And 33, I'm still in on that. So that's good. And I love Pittman, and I especially love Pittman with Matt Ryan. So I'm stoked about that. Again, if you can move essentially flip once for Tannehill, and then you're getting younger as well, even though you're losing a little bit of production, I will take the youth in that case.
Well, I like this trade a lot. I think you might even be able to get like another pick added on top of that too, to be honest. I feel like
very possibly, yes. It depends on how they view it.
Yeah, there is a world where Wentz and Tannehill are close, and I am not a part of that world, but I think Tannehill is two greater signs Wentz. You know what I mean? Like he's significantly better with AJ Brown and now Robert Woods. So I'm with you, but I think there is a world where people are down on Tannehill and he doesn't perform. I had him last year and he stunk. And in Dynasty, that happens often because you keep your players, quote unquote, forever. Mixon significantly better than Jacobs, right? So that's a big upgrade. And then you could even argue, some people might say, Pittman with Matt Ryan, maybe it takes a while, maybe he's not great. Michael Thomas is going to come back healthy. I mean, you could spin a story where you could get more than this. And I think that's the kind of trade I like to send, where you send a little more than you want, and you'd say, okay, fine, take out that 23-second and I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like, or you take out that Jacobs and I'll do it. Like, you have to start the negotiation somewhere. I think a lot of times, and this is as good a time as any to talk about this, but I think a lot of times people try to send their best offer on the first trade. And I get the logic in that, where it's like, let's not mess around. Let's just get it done. But there are a lot of people I deal with this in my real job, in my day job, that just need to feel like they're getting a little bit of a discount, or they're
right,
getting a little bit out of you. And the negotiations for some people are all the fun. So when you send them your best offer and then they come back and say, all right, well, let's change. And you're like, no, that was my best and final. It's like, well, that takes all the fun out of it, So this is a prime example too of knowing your league, who likes to trade. He mentioned that too in his write-up, where there's a couple of trades, a couple of teams that don't trade or are currently unavailable. Like, that kind of stuff is vital to the context of these kind of things, because you can't really trade with every team in the league sometimes, right? Like, I know I've got leagues where there are guys that just rub me the wrong way or vice versa. And I know no matter what I send him, it's smash decline. It just doesn't matter. And there's no talks. And it's like, I'm helping you out. I'm overpaying for this. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like that something I don't know, or, like you fleeced me on that other one. You're going to really have to overpay to get, you owe me back. And it's all that crap comes into play. So I feel like that's the kind of trade where you can send a little more and maybe, trim the fat and get down to that trade. So I like it.
Well, and Tannehill right now, like his ADP is 51, and so that's like the 503, and yet a startup I'm in right now, he just went at the 903 as quarterback 25.
Whew.
Like, that's just not right. Like,
that's good value there.
That I mean, there's just no Tannehill or Mac Jones. Like, let me think about that. Tannehill or Zach Wilson. Tannehill or Derek Carr. And I'm sure some people are saying, well, it's definitely not Tannehill, but it is for me. I've got him, solidly in that QB2 range, and QB 25 is way too low.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I had Tannehill, I think, last year in a redraft league, and it was painful. Right. Like, it was, redraft. I thought I got a good value. I stacked him with Brown. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to crush it. And he did not perform. So I definitely think that there are people that are just out for whatever reason. And I don't see the reason in my head, because again, they added Woods. That's a huge piece to me. I mean, Julio was on and off the field. He had some issues, but Woods, I think, even if he's getting older, coming off an injury, I like that upgrade. And didn't they get a tight end? I forget who they signed.
Austin Hooper.
There you go. So that's an upgrade in my opinion too. I mean, absolutely. You could say Jonnu Smith was better, but that was a couple years ago. I mean, Hooper is definitely better than Burks or whoever they had last year. So yeah. And again, Henry is definitely going to command attention. So I think you can get away with, a little bit more Tannehill in my book. So I don't mind that one at all. I know Rocky's having some Wi-Fi issues. He'll try to hop back in, but in the meantime, I'll start into his trade. If he joins us, he can explain it. But his was pretty simple, but I also really liked where it was going. And it was sending George Kittle to the running back Reaper, Jay Brazia 88, for the 104. So Kittle or the 104, maybe that's the place to start. I won't read too much of his write-up, but I guess, Scott, which would you rather have in this situation, Kittle or 104?
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to trade Kittle as well from this roster. Yep. So I like where Rocky's going with this. It's not a tight end premium, again, to clarify. So yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say the 104 for some reason, but I think ultimately I would probably do it. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to do it. I don't know. I'm kind of, if I'm on the gun right now and I gotta make the choice, I don't know that I do it.
You mean you'd keep Kittle, is what you're saying,
but
right?
It's not that far off. Like, throw me a second or something with it, and then I can do it. You know what I mean? It's that close.
And so I guess I don't know if I mentioned this. He did have Pat Freiermuth on his taxi squad, so he has Ertz, Kittle, and Freiermuth as his tight ends, right?
Right.
So you can sacrifice Kittle in theory. I would almost say I would kind of try to start with Freiermuth for the 104 just to see if that gets it done. Partially because this guy doesn't have the Jay Breezia, whatever, the running back Reaper. He's got 104, 304, 310. So like he doesn't have a second. He doesn't have a lot of other picks. And his tight ends are Hunter Henry, Robert Tonyan, Dan Arnold, Dawson Knox. Like he's got a couple of guys that are just like meh. You know what I mean? Like meh, not really sure. I could see even Freiermuth being better than all that. And maybe you have to add to Freiermuth on that. You know, maybe you send Freiermuth and Sammy Watkins, or like one of those pieces that's for whatever reason the other guy really likes. You know what I mean? Maybe you talk to him and say, hey, I'll send Pollard even maybe. I don't know. I might do Freiermuth and Pollard for 104. Because I think that's, I mean, again, not a fair trade. I'm trading a little much.
Pollard's basically free. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying it's free at all. I'm saying to some people, he has a lot of value. To Scott Sidlow, he has no value. But no, I think that's kind of where my head goes with some of that. And I don't mind sending Kittle or Freiermuth really in this case, because I think that's your position of strength. Here we go. Rocky's back, so he can explain. But we were just talking about your trade there, Rocky. I guess our logic was the Kittle for 104. We dig it. I'm not sure we love it, but what are your thoughts now that you're back with us and can give your explanation a little bit more juice?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys told everybody, but yes, I was without power there for a few minutes. But I'm back. Yeah, basically what I was doing is I looked at Kittle. I thought he was probably the most valuable piece you could move, where I didn't mind moving him. He's got better pieces.
Yeah, 100%.
And so that's what I was trying to do. I do think this guy could potentially contend this year. It's not a monster team, but I think if things break right, he could. And so what I was looking to do was kind of move Kittle. And I also think Kittle's a guy that is kind of low key, could lose value going forward. Like this year. Lance, we don't know if he's even the starter. We don't know what he's going to be. For sure, as a passer. And then there's Debo. If you remember at the beginning of last year, Kittle was not playing that well, and that's when Debo was much more of a receiver, and he was lighting it up as a receiver. And I'm not sure that a Lance offense is going to support Debo and Kittle, and he's not that far off from the point where we're going to start talking about his age. He's going to be 29 in October. So going into next off season, you know, people will be saying he'll be 30 come the 23 season. So he's a guy that I think is going to lose value, but he still has a lot of name value now. It's not a tight end premium, but he's a big enough name, I think, that it still attracts attention. Like, oh, I'm getting an advantage at tight end with Kittle. And then, like I said, I put the 104 as the piece getting back. And in a non-premium, my biggest issue with the trade that I came up with is I wasn't sure if Kittle on a non-premium pulls the 104. But if it could,
I think it does.
Yeah, if it could, I was basically kind of trying to do what he said in his original thing here about getting assets to actually be able to make future moves. And I was just looking at it as you move Kittle for the 104. He has Ertz and Freiermuth. I think that's a perfect combo both for 22 and going forward. Like you have the young guy and the old guy. You can mix and match them this year. By the time Ertz is done, hopefully Freiermuth is ascending even more. And the 104, you can do a whole bunch of stuff with. You could maybe draft Walker or Spiller at 104, depending on which one you like, or trade back to the 107, draft one of them and get something else, or you add them to Wentz and upgrade at quarterback.
I love the flexibility it gives you. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yep. So that's basically what I was thinking there is you have the tight ends to weather losing Kittle. and use the 104 to do maybe one of these other things that you're talking. Or you could even use the 104 to trade for a quarterback, like a mid-tier quarterback. If you want to add a QB3 or even QB2, yeah, that's some guy you think is better than Wentz, you might get for the 104. So it gives you a whole bunch of different ways you can go with it. And 104 is going to probably be attractive to a lot more teams than Kittle is going to be. So that was my thinking behind it.
No, and I think we kind of hit on some of those same topics there while we were waiting for your power to kick back on. But yeah, I don't think there's any negative in sending Kittle right now. I mean, I just don't see his value going up much from here with the way tight ends are. We saw it kind of happen with Waller last year, and I wouldn't be shocked if the same kind of thing happens with Kittle, where it's not that he's dropping in value, but he's dropping in certainty. And some of that lower floor can scare some managers away. And it's like, well, maybe I get out before that even happens. And you've got enough tight end depth on this team where I feel like you can do it. So yeah, I thought the 104 is a fine idea. You might be able to get more than that, like, 104 in a second next year or something, like 104 in another player. I mean, you could, like I always say, to start with some of that and then see if you can build, chop off.
I have trouble with non-tight end premium values because there's literally maybe like one league I play in that's non-tight end premium. So again, I wasn't sure but if if you can get more than 104, go for that too.
In a tight end premium, you definitely could. I agree.
I agree.
I'm saying in a non-tight end, you might be able to, right? I mean, again, there are still some people out there like having that set it and forget it, and that's the value in it. It's not the scoring points; it's the peace of mind, right? So there is some intrinsic value in a way, not scoring points value, not even trade value. Just to, like I said before, you sleep better at night. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to worry about tight end anymore. But again, it depends. Every manager is different. If you're trying to trade to like the one team, I was even thinking of Kittle going to the Hotho 19 something, because he's got Jonnu Smith and CJ Uzama as his only tight ends. And that was the one I was like, well, maybe you could do that for the 105. And that was kind of where my head started. And so it was interesting to see that you went for the 104. I was like, I was kind of in that same boat. And then I was like, you could probably do 105 and maybe the 205 in that case, right? Like you might be able to get both of those because he's so struggling. I mean, again, everything is context and we don't have it all, but that's kind of where my head was at. So I thought your trade was pretty good.
Okay, so I guess I'm assuming you guys went over both years while I disappeared there for a minute.
You loved them. It was awesome.
They were fantastic trades, guys. I can't even, I was speechless.
Yeah.
Okay, but that'll finish us up in a not too shabby, a little over an hour and a half. So we'll get to our stuff here. We'll finish up. A little programming note. There will be no live stream next week. We're actually going to be recording a different day, and just the way it all works out, we're not going to be able to go live. But there will be a podcast, and it actually will likely come out a day earlier. It's probably going to go into the podcast feed on Thursday rather than Friday. So just want to let everybody know that. And then we will be back the following week. We should be back at Thursday at 9:30 the following week. So, but for us here, I'm at Dynasty FF Addict, Andrew's at Andrew Hall FF, Scott at Scott_Sidlow, Dynasty Junkies at Dynasty Junkies. Follow the DAP Network at DAP_network. Also subscribe on YouTube. You can see when we go live. Timeline goes live. Trade Addicts occasionally goes live, and you'll get if you subscribe to the podcast feed, you will get also Get Real with Casey Kasem, which is a great podcast. And I always say this, subscribe to us and give us a rating and review. But I wanted to stress it because I was looking this week and we have not gotten a review since I think last July. I'm not even sure Andrew was on then. So
ouch.
Yeah. So and I'm sure he's very sad that we have not gotten a review since he's come on.
Everybody's just no comment. That can't be right.
Yeah. So give us a 5-star rating, or just give us a review and let us know what you think. Let us know how much you like the addition of Andrew 9 months ago.
Apparently nobody cares. This is great. All right.
But yeah,
hey, they don't hate you.
Yeah, no news is good news. I'll take it. Yeah,
we didn't get a 1-star. Oh, that guy sucks.
Jinxed it now. Oh.
I'll do that one. We'll just get it out of the way.
Somebody out there listening, I've noticed. We've talked about it in our little chat that we've picked up a few more listeners, a few more downloads. So one of you people out there that started listening, hope you. I'm assuming you like it because it's been a little bit of a trend recently. So tell us how much you love Andrew coming on since last July, and how much you hate me and Scott. So
please, I would love to hear it.
Whatever you want to say in the review, just give us a review. Make us feel better. That I just wanted to put that out. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Subscribe to the pod if you like what you've heard. That'll do it for this week, Scott. Why don't you take us out?
All righty. Well, for the homies in the chat, Toronto Dave, Ridley Truther, change your name. Kyle Senra, as always. Everybody else, we appreciate you so much. Keep sending in those Find Me a Trade submissions. Again, thanks for submitting. Nick Aiken, Zayner75, who I believe got to jump in here too. I saw his comment. That was cool. And Miller as well. So thanks, guys, for those submissions. Keep them coming. I know we did an IDP one a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking we have a potentially good IDP guest coming on in the future. So you can send us another IDP one, and maybe we'll do better on that next time. So, yeah. Appreciate those submissions. Keep them coming. For Andrew, for Rocky, I'm Scott. Junkies out.